At Dakshinaswar, though Sri Ramakrishna had offered young Naren various supernatural powers of yoga as a help for his future work, the disciple had refused to accept them as being possible impediments to spiritual progress. But later, these powers began to manifest themselves as a natural fruit of his spiritual realization. Thus one sees him at Thousand Island Park reading the inmost soul of his followers before giving them initiation and foretelling their future careers. He prophesies for Sister Christine extensive travels in Oriental countries and work in India. He explained that his method of foresight was simple, at least in the telling. He first thought of space, vast, blue, and extending everywhere. As he meditated on that space intently, pictures appeared, and he then gave interpretations of them, which would indicate the future life of the person concerned. Even before his arrival at Thousand Island Park, the Swami had had other manifestations of such yoga powers. For instance, while busy with his lecture tour, sometimes giving 12 or 14 speeches a week, he would feel great physical and mental strain and often wonder what he would speak of the next day. Then he would hear, at dead of night, a voice shouting at him the very thoughts he was to present. Sometimes it would come from a long distance and then draw nearer and nearer, or again it would be like someone delivering a lecture beside him as he lay listening in bed. At other times, two voices would argue before him, discussing at great length ideas, some of which he had never before consciously heard or thought of, which he would find himself repeating the following day from the pulpit or the platform. Sometimes people sleeping in the adjoining rooms would ask him in the morning, "Swami, with whom were you talking last night? We heard you talking loudly and enthusiastically, and we were wondering." The Swami often explained these manifestations as the powers and potentialities of the soul, generally called inspiration. He denied that they were miracles. At that time, he experienced the power of changing a person's life by touch, or clearly seeing things happening at a great distance. But he seldom used these and the other powers he had acquired through yoga. One day, much later, Swami Nikhilananda entered Swami Vivekananda's room while the Swami was lying on his bed and beheld, in place of his physical body, a mass of radiance. It is no wonder that today in America, half a century later, now 1 century, when one meets men and women who saw or heard Swami Vivekananda even once, they still remember him vividly. But it must not be thought that the Swami did not show his lighter mood at Thousand Island Park. He unfailingly discovered the little idiosyncrasies of the students and raised gales of laughter at the dinner table with some quip or jest, but never in sarcasm or malice. Dr. Wright of Cambridge, a very cultured man, was one of the inmates of the Dutcher cottage. He became so absorbed in the class talks that at the end of every discourse, the tense professor would invariably ask the teacher, "Well, Swami, it all amounts to this in the end, doesn't it? I am Brahman. I am the Absolute." The Swami would smile indulgently and answer gently, "Yes, Docky, you are Brahman. You are the Absolute, in the real essence of your being." Later, when the learned doctor came to the table a trifle late, the Swami, with the utmost gravity but with a merry twinkle in his eyes, would say, "Here comes Brahman," or "Here is the Absolute." Sometimes the Swami would say, "Now I am going to cook for you, brethren." A food he cooked would be delicious, but too hot for Western tastes. The students, however, made up their minds to eat it even if it strangled them. After the meal was cooked, the Swami would stand in the door with a white napkin draped over his arm in the fashion of a black waiter in a dining car, and intone in perfect imitation their call for dinner, "Last call for the dining car. dinner served," and the students would rock with laughter. One day he was telling the disciples the story of Sita and of the pure womanhood of India. The question flashed in the mind of one of the women as to how some of the beautiful society queens would appear to him, especially those versed in the art of allurement. Even before the thought was expressed, the Swami said gravely, "If the most beautiful woman in the world were to look at me in an immodest or unwomanly way, she would immediately turn into a hideous green frog. And one does not, of course, admire frogs." At the last day of the Swami's departure from Thousand Island Park arrived. It was Wednesday, 7th of August, 1895. In the morning, he, Mrs. Funky, and Sister Christine went for a walk. They strolled about half a mile up the hill, where all was forest and solitude, and sat under a low-branched tree. The Swami suddenly said to them, "Now we shall meditate. We shall be like Buddha under the bo tree." The Swami became still as a bronze statue. A thunderstorm came up and it poured. But the Swami did not take notice of anything. Mrs. Funky raised her umbrella and protected him as much as possible. When it was time to return, the Swami opened his eyes and said, "I feel once more I am in Calcutta in the rains." It is reported that one day at Thousand Island Park, the Swami experienced Nirvikalpa Samadhi. At 9 o'clock in the evening, the Swami boarded the steamer for Clayton, where he was to catch the train for New York. While taking leave of the island, he said, "I bless these 1,000 islands." As the steamer moved away, he boyishly and joyously waved his hat to the disciples still standing at the pier. Some of his devotees thought that the Swami had planned at Thousand Island Park to start an organization, but they were mistaken. He later wrote to a disciple, "We have no organization, nor want to build any. Each one is quite independent to teach, quite free to teach, whatever he or she likes. If you have the Spirit within, you will never fail to attract others. Individuality is my motto. I have no ambition beyond training ripe individuals. I know very little. That little I teach without reserve. Where I am ignorant, I confess it. I am a sannyasin. As such, I hold myself as a servant, not as a master in this world." Vivekananda, the awakener of souls, was indeed too great to be crammed within the confines of a narrow organization. He had had a unique experience of inner freedom at Thousand Island Park, which he expressed eloquently in his poem called The Song of the Sannyasin. He wrote from there to a friend, "I am free, my bonds are cut. What do I care whether this body goes or does not go? I have a truth to teach, I, the child of God. And he that gave me the truth will send me fellow workers from the earth's bravest and best." A month after his return from Thousand Island Park, Swami Vivekananda sailed for Europe. Before we take up that important chapter of his life, however, it will be well to describe some of his interesting experiences in America, especially his meeting with noted personalities. Robert Ingersoll, the famous orator and agnostic, and Swami Vivekananda had several conversations on religion and philosophy. Ingersoll, with a fatherly solicitude, asked the young enthusiast not to be too bold in the expression of his views on account of people's intolerance of all alien religious ideas. He said, 40 years ago, you would have been hanged if you had come to preach in this country, or you would have been burnt alive. You would have been stoned out of the villages if you had come even much later." The Swami was surprised, but Ingersoll did not realize that the Indian monk, unlike him, respected all religions and prophets, and that he wanted to broaden the views of the Christians about Christ's teachings. One day, in the course of a discussion, Ingersoll said to the Swami, "I believe in making the most of this world, in squeezing the orange dry, because this world is all we are sure of." He would have nothing to do with God, soul, or hereafter, which he considered as meaningless jargon. "I know a better way to squeeze the orange of this world than you do," the Swami replied, "and I get more out of it. I know I cannot die, so I am not in a hurry. I know that there is no fear, so I enjoy the squeezing. I have no duty, no bondage of wife and children and property, so I can love all men and women. You see, everyone is God to me. Think of the joy of loving man as God. Squeeze your orange my way, and you will get every single drop." Ingersoll, it is reported, asked the Swami not to be impatient with his views, adding that his own unrelenting fight against traditional religions had shaken men's faith in theological dogmas and creeds, and thus helped to pave the way for the Swami's success in America. Nikola Tesla, the great scientist who specialized in the field of electricity, was much impressed to hear from the Swami his explanation of the Samkhya cosmogony and the theory of cycles, or yugas, given by the Hindus. He was particularly struck by the resemblance between the Samkhya theory of matter and energy and that of modern physics. The Swami also met Sir William Thomson, afterwards known as Lord Kelvin, and Professor Helmholtz, two leading representatives of Western science. Sarah Bernhardt, the famous French actress, had an interview with the Swami and greatly admired his teachings. Madame Emma Calve, the well-known prima donna, described the Swami as one who truly walked with God. She came to see him in a state of physical and mental depression. The Swami, who did not at the time know even her name, talked to her about her worries and various personal problems. It was clear that he was familiar with them, even though she had never revealed them to him or to anyone else. When Madame Calve expressed surprise, the Swami assured her that no one had talked to him about her. He asked, "Do you think that is necessary? I read you as I would an open book." The Swami gave her this parting advice: "You must forget. Be gay and happy again. Do not dwell in silence upon your sorrows. Transmute your emotions into some form of eternal expression. Your spiritual health requires it. Your art demands it." Madame Calve later said, "I left him deeply impressed by his words and his personality. He seemed to have emptied my brain of all its feverish complexities and placed there instead his clean and calming thoughts. I became once again vivacious and cheerful, thanks to the effect of his powerful will. He used no hypnosis, no mesmerism, nothing of that sort at all. It was the strength of his character, the purity and intensity of his purpose that carried conviction. It seemed to me, when I came to know him better, that the Swami lulled one's chaotic thoughts into a state of peaceful acquiescences, so that one could give complete and undivided attention to his words." Like many people, Madame Calve could not accept the Vedantic doctrine of the individual soul's total absorption in the Godhead at the time of final liberation. She said, "I cannot bear the idea. I cling to my individuality, unimportant though it may be. I don't want to be absorbed into an eternal unity. To this the Swami answered, one day a drop of water fell into the vast ocean. Finding itself there, it began to weep and complain, just as you are doing. The giant ocean laughed at the drop of water. Why do you weep? It asked. I do not understand. When you join me, you join all your brothers and sisters, the other drops of water of which I am made. You become the ocean itself. If you wish to leave me, you have only to rise up on a sunbeam into the clouds. From there you can descend again. Little drop of water, a blessing and a benediction to the thirsty earth. Did not the Swami thus explain his own individuality? Before his present embodiment, he had remained absorbed in communion with the Absolute. Then he accepted the form of an individual to help humanity in its spiritual struggle. A giant soul like his is not content to remain eternally absorbed in the Absolute. Such also was the thought of Buddha. In the company of great men and women, the Swami revealed his intellectual and spiritual power. But one sees his human side, especially in his contact with humble people. In America, he was often taken to be a black man. One day, as he alighted from a train in a town where he was to deliver a lecture, he was given a welcome by the reception committee. The most prominent townspeople were all there, and a black porter came up to him and said that he had heard how one of his own people had become great and asked the privilege of shaking hands with him. Warmly, the Swami shook his hand, saying, thank you, brother." He never resented being mistaken for a black man. It happened many times, especially in the South, that he was refused admittance to a hotel, a barber shop, or a restaurant because of his dark skin. When the Swami related these incidents to a Western disciple, he was promptly asked why he did not tell people that he was not black, but Hindu. And the Swami replied indignantly, "What? Rise at the expense of another? I did not come to earth for that." Swami Vivekananda was proud of his race and his dark complexion. One of his most intimate Western disciples, Sister Devi-The, wrote, he was scornful in his repudiation of the pseudo-ethnology of privileged races. He said, "If I am grateful to my white-skinned Aryan ancestors, I am far more so to my yellow-skinned Mongolian ancestors, and most of all to the black-skinned people." He was immensely proud of his physiognomy, especially of what he called his Mongolian jaw, regarding it as a sign of a bulldog tenacity of purpose. Referring to this particular racial characteristic, which is believed to be behind every Aryan people, he one day exclaimed, "Don't you see? The Tartar is the wine of the race. He gives energy and power to every blood." The Swami had a strange experience in a small American town where he was confronted by a number of college boys who had been living there on a ranch as cowboys. They heard him describe the power of concentration, through which a man could become completely oblivious of the outside world. So they decided to put him to the test and invited him to lecture to them. A wooden tub was placed with bottom up to serve as a platform. The Swami commenced his address and soon appeared to be lost in his subject. Suddenly, shots were fired in his direction, and the bullets went whizzing past his ears. But the Swami continued his lecture as though nothing was happening. When he had finished, the young men flocked about him and congratulated him as a good fellow. In his lectures and conversations, the Swami showed a wonderful sense of humor. It was a saving feature in his strenuous life, and without it he might have broken down under the pressure of his intense reflection. Once in one of his classes in Minneapolis, the Swami was asked by a student if Hindu mothers threw their children to the crocodiles in the river. Immediately came the reply, "Yes, madam, they threw me in, but like your fabled Jonah, I got out again." Another time, a lady became rather romantic about the Swami and said to him, "Swami, you are my Romeo, and I am your Desdemona." The Swami said quickly, "Madam, you'd better brush up your Shakespeare." As already stated, Swami Vivekananda was particularly friendly with Mr. and Mrs. Hale of Chicago and their 2 young daughters and 2 nieces. The daughters were named Mary and Harriet, and the nieces Isabel and Harriet McKinley. He affectionately called Mr. Hale Father Pope and Mrs. Hale Mother Church. The girls he addressed as sisters or babies. A very sweet and warm relationship grew up between them and the Swami. His relationship with Mary was especially close. He wrote to her many light-hearted letters. In a letter to the sisters dated on 26 July 1894, the Swami said, "Now, don't let my letters stray beyond the circle. Please. I had a beautiful letter from Sister Mary. See how I am getting the dash? Sister Jeannie teaches me all that she can, jump and run and play, and swear like a devil, and talk slang at the rate of 500 a minute. Only she does not much care for religion, only a little. Darn it, I forget everything. I had ducklings in the sea like a fish. I am enjoying every bit of it. What nonsense was the song Harriet taught me? I told it to the French scholar, and he laughed and laughed till the fellow was well nigh burst at my wonderful translation." This is what she wrote to me, and also she wrote, "That is the way you would have taught me French. You are a pack of fools and heathens, I tell you. How you are gasping for the breath like huge fish stranded. I am glad that you are sizzling in the summer heat of Chicago. Oh, how nice and cool it is here, and it is increased 100-fold when I think about the gasping, sizzling, boiling, frying 4 old maids, and how cool and nice I am here. Woo!" The Swami finished his letter with, "Well, dear old maids, you sometimes have a glimpse of the lake, and on the very hot noons think of going down to the bottom of the lake, down and down and down, until it is cool and nice, and then to lie down on the bottom, with just that coolness above and around, and lie there still and silent, and just doze, not sleep, but a dreamy dozing, half unconscious sort of bliss, very much like that which opium brings. That is delicious, and drinking lots of iced water. Lord bless my soul. I had such cramps several times as would have killed an elephant, so I hope to keep myself away from the cold water. May you all be happy, young ladies, in the constant prayer of Vivekananda." One realizes how deeply Swami Vivekananda had entered into the American spirit when one sees how facile he was in his use of American slang. Surely this letter is an example. As we have stated before, the Swami also needed diversions of this kind in order to obtain relief from his intensely serious life and reflections in America. One recalls that Sri Ramakrishna also would often indulge in light talk in order to keep his mind on the level of ordinary consciousness. Shortly after his success at the Parliament of Religions, the Swami began, as we have seen, to write to his devotees in India, giving them his plans for India's regeneration. He urged them to take up work that would lead to better systems of education and hygiene throughout India. He wanted a magazine to be started for disseminating among his fellow countrymen the broad truths of Vedanta, which would create confidence in their minds regarding their power and potentialities, and give them back their lost individuality. The Swami exhorted his devotees to work especially for the uplift of women and the masses, without whose help India would never be able to raise herself from her present state of stagnation. He sent them money, earned through his lectures, for religious, educational, and other philanthropic activities. His enthusiastic letters inspired them, but they wanted him to return and take up leadership. They were also distressed to see the malicious propaganda against him by the Christian missionaries in India. The Swami, however, repeatedly urged them to depend upon themselves. He wrote to them, "Stand on your own feet. If you are really my children, you will fear nothing, stop at nothing. You will be like lions. You must rouse India and the whole world." About the criticism from the Christian missionaries, Vivekananda wrote, "The Christianity that is preached in India is quite different from what one sees here. You will be astonished to hear that I have friends in this country amongst the clergy of the Episcopal and Presbyterian churches, who are as broad-minded, as liberal, and as sincere as you are in your own religion. For the real spiritual man everywhere is broad-minded. His love forces him to do so. They to whom religion is a trade are forced to become narrow-minded and mischievous by their very introduction into religion of the competitive, fighting, selfish methods of the world." The Swami requested the Indian devotees not to pay any heed to what the missionaries were saying, either for or against him. He wrote, "I shall work incessantly until I die, and even after death I shall work for the good of the world. Truth is infinitely more weighty than untruth. It is the force of character, of purity, and of truth. So long as I have these things, you can feel easy. No one will be able to injure a hair of my head. If they try, they will fail, saith the Lord."